For anyone at this point still trying to survive George Romero's nightmarish zombie world, there is now a bastion of hope in the form of a big, large tower in the middle of Pittsburgh. If only Dennis Hopper would stop hogging it. Hi guys, so the other night I watched Land of the Dead, the 4th out of 6 George Romero zombie films, and this one definitely feels like a bit of a soft reboot. And I say that not just because it had been 20 years between Day of the Dead and Land of the Dead, so you get a very different style of filmmaking by the middle of the noughties compared to the mid-80s. But also, if you look at the storyline and how Day of the Dead finished, so in that film, it felt like the end of times. We were down to like a little pocket of people under the ground in Florida. Every time they went out in a helicopter, they couldn't find any more living people. So it kind of felt like they might be the last people in America alive. But when it comes to Land of the Dead, Romero kind of rose back on that and says, actually, you know what, there are communities here, there and everywhere. The people in Florida just didn't know about it. Probably in Romero's mind, Florida is like a severe black spot when it comes to zombie infestation. But we're back in Pennsylvania in this film, the same state as the first two films. I think Pittsburgh is in Pennsylvania, is that right? So the focus here, as I alluded to earlier, is on this tower in the middle of a small island in the middle of Pittsburgh. I believe this is actually a real place if you look it up. So it's perfect, this place, for defending against zombies. You've got like this massive tower and it's surrounded by water on 3 sides. There's a little bit of land between the water and the tower. And there's like one way to get into this little island, if you can call it that. And in this community in the film, there are hundreds of people living here. There's people in the tower, that they're the wealthy part of the society, I guess. And you've got all these people living in slums just at the foot of the tower. So people have been surviving. They've been putting up barricades and setting up systems for protection and all that stuff. But as soon as we see this place in this film, we just know it's going to get overrun. You know, if you've seen enough zombie films, you know when you see a place like this that it's all going to go to hell. And the only question that remains is, how is it going to go to hell? And will everybody die or just most people? There's a fantastic cast in this. Like in the first 3 films, it was mostly unknowns that Romero was using. But in this one, he's just got an incredible group of actors together. So the main guy is Simon Baker, who plays Riley. He's like a helper kind of guy who lives in the slum section of the society, I guess. He just likes to help people mainly. He's a very, very nice guy. A little bit out of place in this society. Simon Baker, he went on to be in that show, The Mentalist, which did very, very well. I've never seen it. And I guess he went on to have a really great career from that. Although maybe at the time of Land of the Dead, he was a little bit still an unknown. Fun fact, that there was a Simon Baker in my school and I've not seen him since school. I wonder where he is now. Wouldn't it be funny if he was actually living in Pittsburgh? Probably not, given that he's from the UK. So we've got Dennis Hopper in the film as well, who plays like the big head honcho in the ivory tower. He just wants to preserve the status quo. He doesn't want anything changing. He's happy just living the high life in the tower. Dennis Hopper, obviously a legend of an actor, very kind of inconsistent career in terms of what he was in. He was in all sorts, this, that, and everything, in all kind of genres. He popped into horror as well from time to time. Another big actor in this movie, John Leguizamo. He's been in thousands of things, and yet I could probably only name about 3 or 4 of them off the top of my head, because he's never the main guy in anything. He's just there in so many films. But I mostly remember him from this, and also Collateral Damage, where he died just to help Arnold Schwarzenegger out. And probably most of all, Carlito's Way, when he played Benny Blanco from the Bronx. Just one of the most amazing gangster roles in history. I'm Benny Blanco from the Bronx. Can't quite do the accent as well as John Leguizamo. And the final actor slash actress that I'm going to mention is Asia Argento, who is in this film. She's not really a love interest of Riley, but she's there as like a female lead. And you know what? It was really cool for me to see Argento in this film, because I've seen Land of the Dead at least 3 times before, but this was my first watch since I went through Dario Argento's catalogue of films maybe a year or 2 ago. Before I did that, I had no idea who Asia Argento was. So in the past, when I watched Land of the Dead, this character, Slack, her name is, terrible name. To me, it just would have been random brunette in terms of whoever played the role. But This time around, it's like, oh, that's Asia Argento. That's really cool. So I guess she probably got the role because Dario Argento and George Romero were good friends from doing Two Evil Eyes, that collaboration that they did way back when. So with such a fantastic cast in place, this film absolutely was never going to be the worst of the four films up to this point, was it? This is easily the most comic book of all six films in this series. It just feels like something that would be perfect as a comic book. There's so many things happening throughout this film, just all over the screen in every scene, just tons of ideas just there, little things like the zombies that are hung upside down so they can be used for target practice, or the zombie that its head flops back so it can disguise the fact that it's about to flip its head forward again and bite you, or the electrified fence, which looks good for a few zombie kills. This film's just brimming with little ideas like that for kills and things. It's like Romero was storing all this stuff up for a really long time because he didn't do a film in the 90s. It's a little bit like if a band did some albums and then split up for like 20 years and then they came back for a comeback album, but because they'd still been writing from time to time throughout that 20-year period, then when they finally do the comeback album, that album is just absolutely stuffed with ideas and songs, and it's like, that they could maybe make three albums out of their new material, or something like that. But that's how Land of the Dead feels. It's like Romero came on set with a notepad of all these little details he wanted to put in that he's been storing up for a long time, and suddenly he's putting them in like every scene, and it feels like you're watching a lot when you're watching this, which is kind of cool. You're never not entertained when you're watching Land of the Dead. But the problem with this film, easily the biggest problem, is that there's just no real journey that any of the characters are going on. My dad used to say, or well, he said it once. I asked him what's his favourite type of film, I think, and he said, I really like an adventure. And I thought at the time that he just meant like an action adventure, like Indiana Jones or something like that. But what I think he actually meant was that he just likes an adventure within whatever genre he's watching. He wanted to follow characters on some exciting journey, escaping death by the skin of their teeth. You don't really get that in Land of the Dead. Compare this film to some of the great horror films where there is a real sense of adventure with the characters. Something like Halloween and all the stuff that Laurie has to survive at the end of the movie, or Blair Witch Project. The characters are just on this trip through the woods and you're constantly nervous to see what's going to happen to them. That doesn't happen in Land of the Dead. We're watching all these cool things happening, all people dying in all sorts of exciting, fun, splattery ways, all through the movie, but there's no real story for those main characters, and they are good characters. They're really good characters. The ones that I mentioned earlier, played by all those great actors. There are others as well, like the guy Charlie with the scars, and he's a good sniper. Love that character. But if you look at Riley in this film, who is the main guy, like he spends the first half an hour of this trying to find a car. He's in no danger whatsoever. And then in the second act, he's tasked by Kaufman to go and find Dead Reckoning, which is, it's like this armoured vehicle that's been put together. It's like something that might have been in the A-Team back in the 80s. But the thing is, I don't even want him to succeed on this quest to get Dead Reckoning, because that would mean possibly taking out Cholo, played by John Leguizamo, who's my favourite character in this movie. Plus, when Riley's on this journey to get Dead Reckoning, he's given all these extra bodyguards and stuff. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of danger on the way to getting that vehicle back. And then at the finale of this film, Riley actually has Dead Reckoning with his friends, so he's protected by this armoured vehicle. It feels like the threat is minimal. And I don't think Riley and his buddies even go back into the island at any point towards the end when it's being taken over. So all the way through this movie, this main character and his buddies, they're not really in that much danger at all, really. And I think one of them, one of the lesser characters of the group, dies right at the end. But it feels like the film had to work really hard to find a way for this one character towards the end to meet his grisly end, because most of them end up surviving. So that being my biggest complaint about this film, there's just no journey or adventure going on within it. I prefer Day of the Dead. I think there's less things happening in Day of the Dead, honestly. That there are way more like cool little touches and things happening in Land of the Dead, but whereas in Day of the Dead there's a lot of quiet, a lot of calm time. But I'm constantly on edge throughout Day of the Dead as to the situation that those characters are in. You know, at any moment that situation could blow up, and I'm just there with Sarah and her friends, just dreading what the next scene might bring. I'm on edge. I'm excited. I don't feel that way in Land of the Dead. I'm watching it in a very kind of detached kind of way. I'm enjoying all the stuff that's going on, but only in a way that you would do when you just come back from a night out and you're having some pizza and a few beers, and it's like, let's just chuck on some brain dead film and watch some kills. That is what Land of the Dead is. I'd watch this film in the same way that I'd watch Jason 10. You know, sorry, not Jason 10. Yes, yeah, the one on the spaceship. So yeah, you've just got that trade-off in this film. Tons of cool things happening, but there's just not really an exciting story to go along with it for all these really great characters who've been created. I like the Big Daddy part of this film. Big Daddy is the really intelligent zombie who leads all the other zombies to the island. I just think this little subplot has been really well thought out. Big Daddy is not the same as Bub. This isn't just a repeat of what's been done in Day of the Dead, because Bub was just a normal zombie, really, who had been trained and trained to be a little bit more than a normal zombie, but he wasn't especially intelligent in the beginning. Frankenstein kind of conditioned him that way a little bit. Big Daddy is naturally really intelligent and even a little bit emotional. He's definitely an anomaly among the zombie population, but I could believe there could be little one-off zombies that could offer a little bit more in the old IQ stakes. And I like the fact that this guy was probably not that academically smart in his past life, but now, just by a complete fluke, he is in his zombie life. You know, this character could have been like a nuclear scientist, for example, in his previous life, and the idea then would have been, oh, look, this guy used to be really smart and he's carried on some of that smarts into his zombie form. But that would have been less interesting to me. That would have been a little bit lame, actually. I like the fact that this guy was probably just a really lowly petrol pump attendant in his normal life. I mean, we don't know what he was like as a human. He could have been someone who was secretly studying for his accountancy exams, and being a petrol pump attendant was just a temporary thing. But let's just assume that he was a career petrol pump attendant and he wasn't that smart. But now, just by complete accident of fate, he is now, in the next life, the smartest person on the planet among all the zombies. I like that a lot. And actually, the fact that he's got this petrol pump attendant outfit just makes it easier for him to be invisible. Like, he just coasts through this film. Nobody takes him out at any point. It's a little bit of a lottery that he doesn't die at any point, but I feel like what he's wearing does help him a little bit to just stay in the crowd. Nobody's eyes ever seem to go on to him, so they can then take him out. Maybe if he'd been dressed like a cop or something a bit more noticeable, maybe somebody would have shot him at some point. But I just love the character, and the final moment he gets when he's on that little bit of rising freeway and he just kind of turns around and looks at Riley. I love that moment. It's a little bit creepy, actually, that he's so smart. He seems to actually notice that, or be aware of the fact that somebody's looking at him from 500 yards away, so he turns around to look, and just for the briefest moment you think that he might actually turn around and lead the horde all the way back to Dead Reckoning, but he doesn't. But it's cool that he survives the movie. He goes and gets Kaufman a little bit earlier on, and this is another part of the narrative that's just a little bit wasted, because so Cholo gets to Kaufman before Big Daddy, but for some reason they turn Cholo into a zombie in this film before his confrontation with Kaufman, and I really don't like that. It doesn't make any sense. Like, so Cholo sets off from Dead Reckoning to get Kaufman, and that could have been a really good little bit of drama at the tower, you know, because they'd had a little confrontation earlier in the movie. This could have been like a fight to the death or something, but they take that out of play by turning Cholo into a zombie like halfway on his journey, and it doesn't make any sense to me why they do that, because having Cholo zombie go and confront Kaufman is way less interesting than had it been human zombie. So once again, they've sacrificed a potentially interesting side quest, a potentially interesting little journey that one of the characters could have gone on, just for the sake of having a little jump scare, having a zombie pop out of a bush and bite Cholo. Like, oh, it's like they thought, we need something interesting to happen on Cholo's journey from Dead Reckoning to the tower. Oh, let's have him be turned into a zombie. That'll be like a big scare and a big exciting moment. And No, just don't do that. I think what they should have done is have Kaufman remain in his apartment, not even go down to the car park area in the basement. Have him stay up top. Have Cholo stay human and go and confront him up top and kill him. And then Cholo could have had his moment where he thinks to himself, "Yes, I finally got the apartment I always cherished." He could have been like Boris at the end of GoldenEye, holding his arms up. And then that's when Big Daddy would come in and kill Cholo, and it would be like an ironic little finish for an ironic ending for the Cholo character. That's what I would have done. But the way they've done it, having Cholo zombie turn up, it just sums this movie up for me. Very entertaining, full of cool ideas and splatter and gore and all that, but 100% at the expense of any interesting character journeys or adventure. So I will quickly show you the version of the film that I own for this. Here is my DVD copy of Land of the Dead. I will certainly never be upgrading this film. I don't like it enough for that. At the same time, I'm perfectly happy to keep it on my shelf among my other Romero zombie films. It is pretty good. It's just not amazing. It does have some really good features on it, though, which I haven't watched. So it's got a documentary called Undead Again, the making of The Land of the Dead. I'm guessing that's quite substantial because there's like 5 or 6 different parts to it that are even listed on the back of the box. The screen tests, zombie casting call, that could be quite interesting, actually. There's something called Scenes of Carnage. There's something called Zombie Effects from Green Screen to Finished Scene. And there's even an audio commentary, though it doesn't actually say who's doing the commentary. So there's plenty to get your teeth stuck into in this. If you want to learn more about how Land of the Dead was made, I think I could find that kind of stuff interesting, actually. It might explain a few things that I just don't get with this film. I just don't think I have the motivation to spend an entire evening possibly wading through this stuff. I probably won't. I tend to only dig into special features if I really, really like a film. This film doesn't quite pass that barrier for me. Very strange comment on the top here. The legendary filmmaker brings you his ultimate zombie masterpiece. I'm going to read that again. The legendary filmmaker brings you his ultimate zombie masterpiece. No. It's a good film, but no. Right, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give this. I've actually dropped one. Here's the one I dropped. Here's another one. And here's a third one. So we've got 3 bloody axes out of 5. It's a decent zombie film, just not a classic for me. It's probably the least good film up to this point, but it's by no means a disaster. It's just got very, very, obvious issues with it, which I have tried to highlight. But hey-ho, on we move, and I'll be back another time to review Diary of the Dead, Romero's attempt at doing found footage. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.